5th, no, that's the wrong word, a Zorbin meeting of the Cabinet here at Newham Council. And I just wanted to welcome members of Cabinet, the wider executive, members of the press and public who may be in the chamber, albeit I can just see one. Hi, sir, welcome. Your rarity. You'll be treated nicely. Yes. Members of the press and public that may be watching us on the council's YouTube channel, and that relates to the fact that this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. So welcome to everyone over there. For those councillors, stroke members of the executive unable to join tonight's cabinet meeting in person here at East Ham Town Hall, and are joining remotely, you'll be able to engage in the debate, but you won't be able to move or second any of the reports, or will you be able to vote? Attendance won't be officially recording. With regards to etiquette, please can I ask that if you are contributing to a debate or asking a question with regards to a paper, and indeed if you're introducing a paper from the chamber, could you just introduce yourself, including setting out which portfolio responsibility you lead, stroke role that you occupy. And for those members of the cabinet or the executive who are online, and I don't think there are any, please do use the hand symbol on your dashboard. And then just to remind colleagues that there is a supplementary agenda for item 3 relating to decisions made at Cabinet on the 20th of December, that very long meeting that we had where we approved the building a fair and new draft and provisional budget for the next financial year. So let's get cracking. In terms of apologies for absence, could you kindly advise if you've received any formal apologies for absence with this evening's meeting, please?
Yes, I have, Chair. Apologies for absence. Councillor Joshua Garfield, Sabia Kamali, and Mariam Daywell, and Luke Charters.
Okay, great. And also just to let you know that Councillor Carly Mead Parkway will be arriving at the meeting in a short while. She's just she's just in another meeting. Okay, right. So I'm so sorry. Go on.
Can we add the apologies of Councillor Khan?
Councillor Mumtaz Khan as well.
I think, Chair, yes.
Okay, great. So we're just going to add Councillor Mumtaz Khan, and then just drawing your attention to the declarations of interests across pages 9 to 10 in light of the substantive matters that we're going to be considering for a determination, which in essence are agenda items 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or no non-pecuniary interests, disclosable that is, that you need to declare?
Good evening, Councillor Sarah Lewis, Cabinet Member for Children's Services. Non-pecuniary in item 1 on the basis that I'm a trustee of 3 local organisations who may or may not apply for this grant.
In this coming round. Okay, so are there any other declarations pertaining to any matters coming to this cabinet? No. Satish, and welcome to your first
Thank you. Yeah.
formal meeting of cabinet. What's your advice?
Yeah, no, that's a non-pecuniary interest. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And Sarah's able to vote.
Yeah. No,
Brilliant.
yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for that, Sarah. So can I just draw your attention to the minutes relating to decisions made at Cabinet on the 6th of December, which are part of the pack, big chunky pack that we have. And I'm that everyone's read them. And I'm going to, if we can agree that these are an accurate record of the decisions made. Do we agree?
Agreed.
And then on the supplementary decisions of Cabinet made on the 20th of December, can I ask that this is your agreement that this is an accurate record of the decisions that we made on the 20th of December? Is that agreed? All right, great. And then agenda item 4, appointments to outside bodies. There are no announcements relating to appointments to outside bodies being made today. And then we're now jumping on to the first cabinet report, major road land disposal and acquisition in the E15 area of the London Borough of Newham, covering pages, page number 23 to 40. And this is over to Councillor Zulfikar Ali.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Zulfikar Ali, Cabinet Lead for Finance and Resources. Chair, this report relates to the underdeveloped land at Major Road in Stratford, which the council owns. This is adjacent to the Major Road Baptist Church. Previously, our planning officers considered a scheme to redevelop the church site only, and it was concluded at pre-application stage that there is a greater merit for a scheme in the church, as this would give greater benefit to the community as well as generating new homes, which are much needed, as we all know. This led to the church expressing an interest to redevelop the combined site. And if this is agreed by the cabinet and the application goes through the planning, then it will lead to a larger and more efficient development, including a church, as well as 85 new homes. Just to put in the context, if we were to develop our own sites ourselves, we would only get 18 units. So a combined exercise will help us to have far more units than we would on our own. The proposed site is listed in local plan as a green space, but I'm pleased to say that the proposed scheme includes public amenity garden space to reflect as part of the church and housing development, which will be subject of detailed planning considerations in the formal process. The proposal contained in this report, if agreed, will assist in reducing the demand and pressure that we are facing in temporary accommodation, leading to increased financial pressures on the council. And they are part of the corporate plan, as well as building fairer new for all in terms of identifying homes for our residents, which is the priority 5 that we have. 85 units will be what is planned for. This is going to be of great help to our housing needs. And in terms of timeline, if this is approved, it is expected that the planning application will come to committee in September 2023. If that is approved, then we could see the estimated completion date to be summer 2025. Can I say, Chair, that whilst we are selling the land to the church, that there is, as the report clearly states, there's an option for us to purchase the completed 85 units, but there's no obligation. It's an option because we don't know what the situation is going to be like in 2025. And the land value has been assessed by the council's external valuation advisor, and this reflects full development potential of the site as opposed to its current open space value. And if the whole thing goes as per the plan, then as we normally do, we will appoint a third-party housing organization to lease the scheme. And that third party will need to have sufficient capacity to manage the scheme and have previous experience of managing housing. So I ask, with those words, Chair, I ask the Cabinet to approve the recommendation. And I don't know that I'll add anything.
Chair, if I may, so I'm Conrad Hall, Corporate Director of Resources. Just to confirm, as Councillor Ali has said, that the transaction meets the council's financial metrics, as well, of course, as contributing to solving a serious social issue with the lack of affordable housing. You'll see that the transaction structure is somewhat complex, as indeed is the case with many property transactions. And we have on the line Giles Clark, Director of Property, and Sam Folding, Head of Residential Acquisitions, who can add to that as needed or indeed answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other officer colleagues?
Giles, anything you wish to add?
No, Mayor, I think Councillor Ali's introduction was very comprehensive and Conrad has added what I was going to add. So nothing further from me, but available for questions.
Okay, super. Right, are there any questions, colleagues? No questions?
Very straightforward.
Unusually quiet of you, but it is very straightforward. Okay. I don't think I was supposed to say that. Right, okay, so if we can just look at the recommendations, page number 24, going into the top of big page number 25. And those stretch from 3.1 to 3.5. And as much as I love the sound of my voice, I will not read it out. But do we agree?
Agreed.
Agreed. Joy, that's agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're moving on to car club provision policy in LBN, covering big pages 41 to 54. Over to you, James Asser.
Yes, this is been discussing for some time. Our clubs are quite popular across the country and run in a number of boroughs in London. There is a gap in Europe. There is interest from car clubs to operate within the borough. There is some provision already, but only on private land where there have been private developments. The borough has in the past rolled out bays for car clubs on previous schemes, but none exist at the moment. We think there is a big scope for this. Part of our work over the last couple of years has been encouraging people to drive less, to more sustainable methods, but we always understand there's always some scope for people to need vehicles, but often people are keeping them when actually they're not using them very much or just need them for occasional use. It fills that need by allowing people to hire them for when they need to a one-off journey or whatever. That's helping them with their costs, but also meeting our targets around improving the environment. So I'll keep it brief. I've got Jamie Cook in the room and Murray Woodburn. Murray can tell us lots of interesting technical things.
Right, super. Thank you very much. And Jamie, is there anything you'd like to add before I pass it over?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the only thing I would add is that car clubs are really good for time use for those that may not otherwise be able to afford a car. They dramatically lessen the one-off capital cost of car purchase and the fixed revenue ongoing costs of tax, insurance, that kind of thing. So I think it offers our residents a really good opportunity for just occasional car use, maybe for the occasional job interview or visit to a hospital, whatever it might be, where public transport may not always be convenient. And I think that's the main purpose.
Okay, super. Right, I'm going to open up to questions. I've got a couple, but I'm not going to go first. Right, Councillor Neil Wilson. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you want to add anything?
No,
No?
it's all right, Mayor. We can go straight to questions. I'm here to
Okay.
answer anything if I can.
All right, I've got Councillor Neil Wilson.
Yeah, Councillor Neil Wilson, Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care. I concur with the comments on paragraph 314 about people who do not want to own a car but need to make occasional journeys, and the reference specifically, I think, already we've had reference to hospital appointments. So in terms of the location of the hospital, which is in my ward, there are bus routes, but it is a very open site, and it might be helpful because transport and the irregularities sometimes, and the people where it does say there, people who cannot afford to own a car, for instance, due to long-term illness, preventing them from working. And I think there's a part of our population, if we're serious about making accessibility and integration within the hospital services, particularly, that I would welcome this. But I think we need to just continue to advertise it. And my question, sorry, that is long-winded way of coming to the question, is to say, how might we promote this more? Because I think one of the reasons why the bays that are currently, for instance, outside Plaistow Library, Councillor Lofthouse and I see unused, is because people aren't aware of them. We don't make a sort of a communications case for it.
Well, I can
really how to get that.
Well, I can answer why they're not being used is because there is not a vehicle occupying those bays.
Yeah.
Those bays were created in advance of this exercise that we are seeking approval for now, when the new RPZs were created.
Right.
And in fact, the only operational car club bays that we have in the borough are those that have been delivered specifically by planning obligations related to car-free housing normally. So to offset the car-free housing designation, we will often seek a car club vehicle to be provided by the developer in lieu of that car parking spaces. So we appreciate that there is no kind of encouragement for people to use the car clubs, because at the moment we do not have a borough-wide offer to promote. So we will very much be doing that once we have an operator partner in place to publicise the fact that people can make use of these vehicles. And of course, the visibility of them once they appear on site will actually start to give people the confidence to perhaps consider giving up a second car that they have, or knowing that that car is available to them when they might want it.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? I've got Councillor John Whitworth and then I've got Councillor Zulfikar Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor John Whitworth, Commissioner for Climate Emergency and Air Quality. On page 45, 313, it says that the council could arrange for its staff to access vehicles for work purposes, which would reduce the need for using the commercial fleet. I just wondered how it was envisaged this could operate.
Well, I mean, this would be part of our procurement exercise, and we may or may not wish to include this. But there are some local authorities operating in London already whose entire car fleet has been effectively provided by their car club operating partner. So that is an option for us, which could potentially reduce our fleet operating costs. So that will be part of our investigations as we go forward on this exercise. But there are certainly existing models where basically all of the vehicles which the council uses for, not bin lorries and things of that sort, obviously, but the normal vehicles and vans that are provided are actually being provided by a car club operator.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Zulfikar Ali.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Maria, for that detailed explanation. My comment or question really is about the competitiveness and to see how we can reduce the financial impact on the residents who may decide to use the car clubs in order for them to see that this is a very economically kind of competitive and cheaper option to use. And how do we ensure that through the procurement process?
Well, that will be a key element of our procurement, of course, what the costs to our customers, our users, our residents and businesses will actually be, and also what potential social value we may be able to extract from the car club operator in the form of discounted rates for certain users or certain user groups. So I can't tell you what that is yet, but obviously that will be a key part of our negotiation to ensure that those prices are kept down and to make sure that it is a genuinely viable opportunity for lower income residents.
If I may come back to you, from our research around other boroughs and other authorities, do we know what that is, and is that something that is palatable with our transport planning policies?
Well, I mean, when you look at across the marketplace, the average price is in London, at least, is around £11 per hour. And when you consider that in relation to the price of the equivalent taxi journeys, for example, that appears to be very competitive. So we will obviously keep a very close eye on that, and we will probably ensure through the procurement exercise benchmarking against other neighbouring boroughs to ensure that we remain that at that competitive level.
Thank you. That's helpful, Chair.
Any other questions aside, Sarah?
Yeah, you did the point, Murray. We were all hoping we could hire a dust car to drive up the park.
Glad to.
So many years ago, there are two, I think, car club spaces in Tarling Road, and they were actually really well used. I am talking about 3 or 4 years ago. But one of the main issues that the operators had was that actually these cars were vandalised on a regular basis. And I just wonder, you know, if we're going to have car club bays, which I think are a really good idea, we need to have them in a more prominent area. So typically where there's more people walking past, so less likely that the cars will be vandalised. I know that sounds a bit cardboard, but
No, that's a very, very good point, Councillor Rees, and thank you for raising that. I think, you know, it's interesting you should say that because speaking to colleagues in Greenwich, they put some vehicles into, you know, one of the slightly sort of rougher areas of Eltham. And in fact, those cars were the only ones that were systematically not damaged or impacted because the residents saw them as a community resource and the vehicles were sort of theirs. So obviously that what you've raised on Tarling Road is you know, of concern to me. So certainly I think we will need to consider very carefully the location of these bays, preferably with CCTV coverage to ensure this sort of thing isn't likely. So we will certainly build that into our discussions with the operators about where those bays are going to be located.
thank you, Murray.
If I can have a bit, because I think it links into Councillor Wilson's question. I think that comes into the advertising as well.
Yeah.
It's the point Murray has made about people seeing it as a community resource. If as part of the advertising, we make people feel like they've got some ownership, but it's something they can do. There would be that element of neighbourhood watch, for the better phrase.
I think that's a really nice
So I think we link that in with the kind of point made earlier about making sure people feel they can use it and might help some of those issues.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Anne Easter.
Thank you. Anne Easter, I'm the Commissioner for Interfaith Dialogue. I wondered how many of the cars would be electric?
Well, again, Councillor Easter, again, very valid question, and that will be part of our procurement discussions and sounding out that soft market testing. There is a certain reluctance on the part of car club operators to electrify their fleets because obviously that by implication builds in an element of dead time where the vehicles may not be available for hire. But I think you know, there are certainly moves being made by both Enterprise and Zipcar to electrify their fleets, and they have both made considerable commitments to that effect. So I think it's very likely that we will get at least 30% of those initial bays with electric vehicles operating from them, and it's likely that we will require through the life of the concession arrangement that percentage to gradually step up through the life of the concession.
Thank you, that's
Yeah.
good.
Okay, fine. Okay, so Murray, I've got some questions. Could you just explain to me why in parallel to the procurement process, you're also developing the strategy, which I appreciate will be informed by a soft market testing process to ensure that you get the rigor and the robustness right with regards to the strategy. But I'm not understanding the logic or rationale of procuring whilst you're still developing the strategy. Why are they happening concurrently as opposed to one then the other? But surely you want the procurement to be informed by the strategy, or is there some amazing skill that you can do it?
No, that's you're quite right to spot that, Mayor. I mean, that is the intention, that these processes will be done sequentially. So we will use the soft market testing to inform our strategy, which will determine how many bays we think the borough can sustain, what mixture of bays there might be, because there are obviously the return to base models where the vehicle is fixed in a certain location, and there are other floating models where the vehicle can be picked up and left in different locations. So we'd like to try and find out what the exact mix of that is. And then finally, we need to find out just exactly what sort of permit cost that the market is likely to sustain, which will be part of our policy. And then once we've established that, we will go to the market and say, right, we've identified we need 165 spaces, we need 110 of these to be returned to base model, and however many remainder in the other models. So we will actually work sequentially through, and the procurement will be the final phase in what we're doing. And then obviously we'll come back to you as cabinet to seek approval for the appointment of that preferred operator following that procurement exercise.
And can I ask, what's the minimum income generation that would make this worthwhile, notwithstanding the validity of having a car club policy as a contribution to our system transport position and framework?
Well, I mean, I would envisage that the average car permit for a car club vehicle would be of the order of one of our business permits or greater. So I would suggest that we are looking at about £800 to £1,200 per operating permit, although there may be an argument that the floating model should actually have a slightly more expensive permit, because you're allowed to basically put that anywhere on the public road network. So working on that basis that we might have 200 bays across the borough, then we are looking at an annual income of potentially £200,000. But we are not incurring any outlay at all. We will have a zero cost procurement effectively, where these people will happily offer their car club services to us for nothing in exchange for an operating concession from the parking bays that we designate.
So circa £200,000 per annum, thereabouts, obviously
Roughly.
subject to the strategy development and the soft market testing, and what approach you'll deploy in terms of whether it's a mixed economy with one major supplier, for want of a better word, under the concession arrangement. So these are from companies that I'm assuming earn multi-million pounds profits in terms of their bottom line. And is anyone able to provide me what the land value of a car space bay would be if it was, for instance, sold? And whether there's a correlation between the income generation per bay and the actual land value of the car parking bay, given that Newham's quite optimal. I just don't want for us to be screwed. Apologies for my language, everyone. Metaphorically, of course. Amongst these, don't make me laugh. I am so sorry, everyone. All right. Yeah, you get the point.
Yeah, no, and that's a perfectly valid point to make, Mayor. And I think it's our job as officers to make sure that in the procurement exercise we do extract that maximum value for the council and its residents. Now, obviously, there is a balance between how much we charge the operators to operate and how much they will charge for their services to our residents. So there is a sort of sweet spot that we need to find, which will be part of that soft market testing.
Okay. I've got one more question, by the way, but I'm gonna
to the question of the value of the land. Of course, procurement exercise is one way of then establishing what the value of that land is. Really, one can then make decisions around whether one wants to receive the full financial value of that. So on. It's exercises like this that provide a means of value of the land. Obviously, there are other ways of doing that in sort of technical accounting. It's not as though the highway is something that can be sold in an ordinary way. The other valuations that we have on it are fairly abstruse and technical accounting values. This provides you with a market valuation of it, albeit necessarily in some caveat.
Okay. And my final question, I hope it's my final question. So just in terms of the soft market testing and the circa 200 bays that will be appropriated for the car club strategy and rollout, How many car club bays are there at the moment? Apologies if I've missed the detail in the report. But what is the general contribution of 10 car club bays to congestion in a borough, and who will determine where those car club bays are located? What will be the drivers?
Well, the Car Plus, the car club operating body, claim that the introduction of a car club vehicle in an area will reduce the number of vehicles that are owned in that area by about 10 cars. So effectively, we will reduce the number of operating vehicles in our fleet. So that will initially have an immediate impact a positive impact on air quality. Secondly, on the air quality aspect, the vehicles, the car club vehicles are very modern, low emission, and in some cases electric vehicles. So they are in almost every case much less polluting than the vehicles that they actually replace. And then thirdly, because there is a process where you have to actually book these vehicles in advance, there is an element of planning required in making your motorized journey, which means that the sort of the off-the-cuff car journey is less likely to happen. So you're not going to book a car club to drive down to the local newsagent to buy a paper and rolls and milk or whatever. So it will also encourage people to think about the motorized journeys that they make. And therefore, again, have that positive impact on the number of motorized journeys and the air quality that we enjoy in Newham. On the other point, just remind me. Sorry, I've scribbled it down, but I can't actually read my own writing. So you mentioned also.
We didn't hear what your last bit
I've forgotten. No, I will remember. Can we rewind the YouTube?
Oh yes, it was how many car club bays we've got at the moment,
yeah.
and who decides where they are. Yeah, so we created a number of car club bays in the sort of second generation RPZs that were implemented in around 2014 to 2016, and they created about 60 or 70 or so bays, I think, from memory, which are yet to be occupied. And obviously we got a lot of pressure from residents saying, there's an unused bay in my street. So clearly we want to address that. However, it may well be that we went through no process at all. We randomly allocated some bays as permit bays at the time those RPZs were being implemented. So we're not sure if those bays were actually ever put into the correct places to serve the best catchment of residents that would use it. And again, that's where our soft market testing will help us, because most of the car club operators already know exactly where they want their cars to be, because they've already done that revenue modeling of the likely demand that is in our borough. And I can tell you actually that they are absolutely chomping at the bit to operate in our borough, as they see us as a very lucrative place where they see their car clubs performing very well. So I think that will also help us to ensure we get a very good deal for our residents, simply because of that competition to operate here.
Add to Murray's earlier answer, I believe links in, I think, again, to this question about advertising. When we first rolled out the emissions-based parking charges, I remember one of the emails I got was somebody saying, I'm already having to pay for Transport for London for the tube and the DLR because I commute into work every day and I only use my car on a Saturday, so I just have to pay this. Actually, if you take out the cost of the parking permit, you take out insurance, MOT, routine maintenance, petrol, tax, it's quite, the economics of that are pretty poor. Lots of people do that because they need a car occasion. they're actually advertising, getting people to think about how those costs might work. There's a whole market of people there who are keeping a car for very little use, but actually the costs of that are quite high. Then that's what a lot where the market will come in, which helps with kind of reducing the overall fleet, but actually benefit residents, particularly when a lot of those costs are soaring. So I think that this is probably a good time in terms of kind of helping people out in terms of household budgets, particularly around some of the costs that are going up.
No, I appreciate the point. I think I'm particularly interested in how in the development of the strategy, and I appreciate the bays have been installed. That was in a period of time where there was a particular view about those areas and neighbourhoods and what the council at the time wanted to drive in terms of economic activity. Yeah, and how it aligns to our inclusive growth strategy. You know, the designation of Stratford area as a green zone and whether it's appropriate or not appropriate, the number, the scale, where we want to be reviving more hyperlocal high streets where we've been getting issues in terms of traders complaining that, you know, they're losing business, etc., etc. So all of that in the round. Who's going to do? So is there going to be? So the development of the strategy is going to be done what by an expert research outfit or officers?
Yes, a combination of officers and our term consultants, who are Project Centre Limited, who already did the initial report, which indicated the scale of opportunity in the borough. So we will be doing it in line with our consultancy partners.
Okay, right. Are there any other questions? Nope. All right. So let's go to the recommendations. So the recommendations spread over 2 pages. So that's 2.1 and 2.2 and subsections recommendations. I mean, across big page number 42 and big page number 43. And the Cabinet is recommended to agree. And I just want to be really clear about what we're agreeing. So in essence, we're delegating authority Director of Environment, Highways and Sustainable Transport in consultation with the member to develop the car club policy, to commence a soft market testing exercise with car club operators in order to gauge the likely number of bays the market could provide across the borough mix. To proceed with a competitive procurement exercise at zero cost to the council. And then we're also requested to note that the existing car club bays in the borough delivered through specific planning agreements will not be affected by this exercise. And will continue to operate with the current operator as per the existing obligations secured at the time of planning. So will there be 2 car club regimes?
Well, it may well be that our procurement actually recommends that we appoint more than one operator. That is an option. But yes, I mean, we certainly wouldn't want to impact on the existing planning obligations and the existing operators that are providing those vehicles as part of those planning obligations. So we are keeping them completely out of it. And yes, it may well be that some of those are operated by Zipcar, and potentially we may have a different operator in the borough. But we already have different operators in the borough because developers have chosen to go with different car club operating partners already. So I suppose it gives people in the borough an increased opportunity because the membership fees are nil in many cases, so they can join as many schemes as they like.
You know, the existing regime that's in place, how long does that go on for? Is it forever?
Well, yes, effectively. I think the planning obligation is open-ended. So there is no end date to which that requirement to provide the car club is there. But as long as the car club is operating and generating revenue for the operators, which in every case they are, there is no reason for the operator to ever suspend the operation of that bay. So I think as long as they keep making money, they will be happy to provide them forever.
And do we have, sorry, this is a really important point and it seems really daft. well, yeah, I'm not surprised. It was daft that we had an open-ended concession agreement,
Yes.
the existing base.
Well, no,
But
that's
how-
sorry, I should have made myself
Sorry,
clear there.
have I misunderstood?
Yes, the arrangement is not with us. It is with the developer who is meeting the planning obligation. It is their job
Right.
to procure an operator for the car club bays. So we don't actually have a relationship, a direct relationship with any car club operators at the
Oh,
moment.
I've got it.
So we have a completely free rein to engage with anyone going forward.
Just to give you an example, the street I live on, there are 2 car club bays aren't used. There are another 2 car club bays in the area, sort of parking area of a block of flats, which actually you can access because it's not gated off. But that's a private block of flats, private development, and it's a private arrangement with the developer. So whilst you could, I assume, get access to it because it's not within a secured area, it's not on the public road and it's not a council-run scheme. So.
We do have some, having said that, Councillor Asher, we do have some that are operating on the public highway outside of those car-free developments, and there are residents who are able to join and use those who aren't necessarily part of that development. So it becomes a more general provision for that area. But yes, as I said, we do not have a direct relationship with the operators of those bays.
Murray, do you know how many of those car club bays we're talking about? The ones that have been given approval under planning conditions? I'm assuming section 106.
That's correct. Yes, they're all secured through section 106 obligations. I think it's actually in the table there on big page. Where are we? It's actually in the appendix. Sorry. So on big page
Appendix 2?
53, on big page 53, it shows that we have at the moment 98 fixed bays, of which 23 are off highway.
Oh my God, there's 85 that are vacant.
Yes, that's correct. We have. So yes, as I said.
Sorry, Murray, can we not just evoke planning enforcement?
No, these include the ones which we created as part of the RPZ review process. So some of these bays that are on street now and marked are not actually anything to do with planning obligations. So the ones that are showing as being occupied there are the ones which are.
Oh, so there's 13.
So yes, that's right. We've got 13.
And so what do we do with the 85?
Well, the 85 will be in the mix for the procurement, whether or not we use those bays or whether we identify other locations. And we clearly will need to identify other locations as well, because there's a whole bunch of RPZs that don't have these designated bays in them yet. Yeah. And we're very keen to make sure that any procurement ensures that we have a geographical spread of cars across the borough, and that we don't just have a car club operator cherry picking Stratford and Forest Gate.
Yeah.
And have different tiers and pricing.
Exactly, yes.
Sorry, just one final question from me, and then I know that Zulfika wants to ask a question. Of the fixed bays that are designated as occupied, 13, do you know how frequently they're used?
Yes, I mean, we get reports regularly from Zipcar and Enterprise who are operating those bays that are secured through planning, and they are operating very, very well, which is why they are continually pestering us to see if they can get more bays in the borough. So I can actually give the exact usage details of those bays to anyone who's interested, but in general terms, they are extremely well used, and they are some of the best performing car club vehicles that they have anywhere in London.
And those 13 of which that are designated of which are occupied, basically there is no end point because they're part of a planning obligation that development committee has approved at some distant point in the past. Sorry,
that's correct.
My really bad language.
Yeah, no, that's quite correct.
And there's nothing in planning terms that we can do?
Well, no, but I don't think there's anything in planning terms that we would necessarily want to do, because they are providing that alternative that we identified would be, provided in lieu of car parking opportunities and the car-free designation of that property. So as long as the operator is happy to continue to make their money from that bay, there is no reason for us to try and intervene, I don't think.
But
What we
we're not,
might
but are we optimizing our income generation potential? That's my question.
Well, that was what I was just about to come on to, and you'll see that in one of the notes in 2.2.3, I think from memory, it does make reference to the fact that at the moment we are not looking to retrospectively apply a permit charge to those bays that were delivered in that way through the planning process, but we may choose to review that in the future so that basically those car club operators are subject to the same charges as our procurement.
And I'm assuming it's a may and not a will, because you need to look at the legalities.
Well, that's right. And we wouldn't want to threaten the removal of something which is effectively a planning obligation if we were to introduce a cost that would potentially make that car club operator less viable on that site.
They're the best performing car club. So that's just, to me, lots of ching, ching, ching.
Well, yes, well, that will certainly be our starting point, I think. But
It also suggests something else, because we've got some of the best performing park clubs. If you look at the same time, the partnership we've got on Cycle Hub with Brompton, which is some of the most successful ones in the country, there is clearly a demand for options around across different modes. So whilst this hasn't been done in a long time, we're pushing an open door both residents and operators.
Okay. Thank you very much. Right, I've got Sarah, and then I've got, no, in fact, I haven't got Sarah first. I've got Zulfika, then Sarah. And this is a really interesting debate. Sorry. I'm not going to win my bet.
Another discussion that we had earlier, Murray, bearing in mind that this is something that is going to be on rise and increase. I just wonder whether for consistency and to have some control, would we not have a list of approved operators that we could actually use as part of the planning conditions, so that when we do agree, then the developer has to use one of those operators that we have approved, and a part of the approval process, we can ensure that there is least impact on the residents through that process. Is that something we could do as part of the process?
yes, we would. It's an interesting idea, Councillor Ali, but I think we could certainly explore the legality of that. I think yes, I mean it's an interesting one. I mean, what we require.
We have that in other service areas.
Well, yes, well, what we require of our existing planning obligations is that they appoint what we call a Car Plus accredited operator, and Car Plus is the sort of trade body, if you like, the organisation for car club operators that receive their accreditation from Transport for London. So that is all that we require of developers, but because they have that accreditation, we're relatively comfortable that they are, you know, not some sort of fly-by-nights or anything like that. But if we go through a procurement exercise and we identify a number of preferred operators, for example, then it's perfectly possible that following that procurement exercise, we will be legally entitled to prescribe them in Section 106 agreements as their preferred operators for those bays. I don't think we could say you have to use X instead of Y, but I think we could certainly limit it to those who had responded positively to our procurement.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I've got Sarah, and I'm going to then conclude with bringing James Asser, if you'd like to make any concluding remarks in light of the discussions that we've just had. It's a very interesting.
Can you enjoy yourself?
So James would actually open the door for a question I probably wouldn't have asked. We talked about the Brompton bikes, which I think have been it's really positive, and I think because they are more expensive to hire, people are less likely to litter the borough with lime bikes, those orange ones or whatever. What do we do about? I have no idea how you hire them or anything like that before I say anything. But the borough is littered with bikes, and who the responsibility is that? You know, I mean,
If I may,
it's nothing to do with.
okay, so let's just park it and you can pick that up outside.
Park it, yes, park it.
Yes, I'm happy to respond to you offline, Councillor Ruiz, about that issue, and
Yeah, we can take that outside of this meeting.
I don't have an answer, but we can take this.
Yeah.
Yes,
I have
okay.
got one curious question, which is about future-proofing parking bays, but I will leave that
Take
out.
that.
It's, you know, SpaceX and rockets.
There are some big-
Future-proofing. You just imagine an abandoned space rocket because no one wants to go to the moon and back for a day. Anyway, right, okay, let's move on. Right, recommendations. So is everyone content with where we've taken the conversation and feel fully informed and enlightened about the matters?
Indeed.
So what you're going to be making a decision on? Yep, okay, cool. So do we agree with all the recommendations that set out?
You do, agree.
Agreed.
Joy, we agree with all the recommendations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Get there, Joy.
Let's move on to because I've had lack of sleep, this is what happens. I end up getting delirious. Right, improving the borough's air quality, funding agreement with Uber BV for the procurement of public electric vehicle charging points. The appointment of a drum roll preferred bidder. Over to you.
Still got Jamie, still got.
Oh, sorry.
I'll keep it brief. I think this is very straightforward. We've discussed this a number of times before. There was a commitment to increase the number of electric vehicle charging points. If people remember, we've been to cabinet before on this topic around a partnership with Uber to fund more EV charging points. We know we need more, and we know that one of the big problems we face, as with everything, is funding. These aren't cheap and sourcing funding. So we did deal with Uber. We've been through a procurement process to find a provider, and that's it. We'll bring on this. Jamie, Murray, do you wish to add anything at that?
No, I don't think so.
Well, you don't stand a chance.
No.
I think this is really good. We're getting 400 units all at once. We get lots of questions and inquiries from our residents about when we get more electric vehicle charge points in so that they can switch to electric. And I think the really good thing about this is that it is the provider that pays for them. It's their financial risk. So the local authority isn't taking financial risk of paying for these and installing them.
Okay. Murray, is there anything you'd like to throw into the mix?
No, this is just the result of the procurement exercise. We have discussed the sort of wider issue of our Uber procurement at previous cabinet meetings, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Colleagues, you'll note there's only one recommendation in essence, but are there any questions? Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Murray, you've identified one risk in section 4.8. I just wonder, bearing in mind that this was a partnership with Uber and the money was coming from that side, what are the consequences of, if this didn't materialize as we intended now?
Yes, I mean that's a very valid point, Councillor Ali, and we did raise that because the operating record of this particular charge point operator is not a particularly long one, and therefore we don't have an awful lot of historical evidence to gauge them against. However, they are supported and in partnership with Virgin Media, which suggests that they are very well funded, I suspect. So I think that's a relatively low risk that they will disappear from the market. But I think obviously we need to secure in the contractual arrangements with them protections in the event that does occur, and the transfer of any assets that have been delivered by that point to ourselves. Now, the important thing that we should remember here is that although Uber are providing some of the money and the market is providing the remainder, the infrastructure will actually be ours from day one. And we will allow them to operate it and maintain it for the concession period. But the kit is actually ours, which means that if we do lose our charge point operator at some point in the middle of our concession, we can actually go out and re-advertise our existing charge points, which they have delivered for us, to an alternative operator, which hopefully shouldn't take too long, and we shouldn't be out of shouldn't be without an operator for a long period.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Charlene, I know, I was just trying to throw you.
Yeah, so I was going to ask similar to Zorfi, but just building on your answer, Murray, and excuse my ignorance, but are they all standard? So it will be configured so that another operator can just change the electricity supply, the payment system, etc.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, surprisingly, actually, we had two of our tenderers offering us the exact same bit of equipment. So the charge point operators themselves don't often make the charge points, the infrastructure, the thing that goes in the ground that you plug your car into. There's a number of specialist electrical manufacturers that make those, and the charge point operators generally have partnerships with some of them. But there is a great deal of interoperability. There are British standards and other things which are required to be met. So there would be no real issues in anyone picking up any of the chargers that we have implemented. The ones that are being proposed are pretty standard. Alphen is the manufacturer. It's a German-Dutch company. It's a standard twin head unit that's used by quite a lot of charge point operators. And as I say, we had two of our tenderers proposing the same bit of kit, obviously with different back office systems, but clearly the interoperability between that system is there. So it's a very good question, but I don't envisage any difficulties because there's actually a limited amount of suppliers out there that provide the kit, and they all use it. All the charge point operators use it.
Oh, that needs to be informative. I know a lot more about it now. Thank you, Murray.
Okay, I can't see any other questions that want to be asked. So the recommendation on big page number 57 is Liberty Charge Limited be appointed as our preferred charge point operator for this procurement to deliver, operate and maintain 400 electrical vehicle chargers for the agreed concession period. Do we all agree?
Agreed.
We all agree, Joy. When will this kick off?
Well, as soon as the cooling off period is finished after this decision, we will start our inception meetings with them and start our developing our delivery plan for getting them out on the ground. So this is the last stage before we can commence that process.
Getting stuff done.
Exactly.
Stuff done.
All right, brilliant. Well done to everyone involved. Right, we are now moving on to the procurement of payment acquiring services. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. That's me. This report seeks approval for the procurement of the new payment acquiring service, and payment acquiring service is the transaction cost of payments that we make through when we buy things through credit or debit card. Over the last 7 years or so, the demand for credit and debit card payment has grown significantly. In fact, by 65% since 2014-15. Just to give you some figure, in 2014-15, the total transaction the council achieved were 58 million, and now we are receiving 95 million pounds through credit and debit cards, and that is rising. And clearly that's something that we're promoting in order to reduce the checks and the cash payments, etc., which is helping us in that regard. We have had arrangements with a company called WorldPay, and that has been costing us 700,000 a year. We've done some market research and market testing, and we are of the view that we could save almost 50%, i.e. around 350,000 pounds if we were to re-tender this service. And this report is asking you to agree to procure this service through Crown Commercial Services RM 1618, and that's a framework agreement, and that is recommended to be our preferred option with significant saving that could be achieved.
Thank you very much.
Conrad?
Well, I suppose the summary is that you want to be able to take payments by debit and credit card. In order to do that, you need to have this payment via a service. This report hopefully paves the way to get that at age.
Right, everyone got that? It's pretty standard system, good approach, as you would expect from Zulfikar and Conrad and the team. Right, are there any questions? Nope. Okay, so we're going to go straight to the recommendations, and we are going to determine. Right, for the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet is recommended to agree 3.1 to approve the procurement of a new payment of borrowing contract for a period of 4 years, estimated value of £375,000 per annum via Lot 1 face-to-face CMP card acquiring gateway and APM services, the Crown Commercial Services RM 611 framework agreement. 3.2 to delegate to the Corporate Director of Resources in consultation with Cabinet Lead Member for Finance and Resources to award the contract to the most economically advantageous bidder. Do we agree?
Good.
We agree, Joy. Okay. No, I didn't say it. I agreed. So I say that so that she knows that I also agreed. Because it would be embarrassing me not agreeing, wouldn't it? Okay, so the final. Right, so we've got the final cabinet paper. It's the development of the Community Assemblies Programme 2023 to 2025 period. And over to the brilliant Councillor Charlene McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Charlene McLean, Cabinet Member for Residents Engagement and Resident Experience. Firstly, before I commence, I'd like to make some very minor amendments to my lead member instruction and paragraphs 1.3, 2.1.2 and 3.7 within the published report. So the amendments are to insert the words neighbourhood in front of the words community infrastructure levy, or still in each instance ensure there is clarity on the source of funding to be applied to this programme, the neighbourhood element of the community infrastructure levy funds, which have different conditions on how money can be spent. So, and the community assembly wholly aligns with said conditions and has been designed to respond to the legal requirements and the council's ambitions to be a beacon of participatory budget setting. So just to be clear, that recommendation 2.1.2 be amended to read, allocate each of the 8 neighbourhoods a further 200,000 over 2 years for projects in the area to be chosen by the Community Assembly and local residents, totaling £1.6 million of neighbourhood rather than through levy funding April 2023 to March 2020. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, brilliant. Our pioneering community assembly programme, of which is one of the largest participatory budgeting exercises in the country, is a key way in which we as a council deliver on our People Power Manifesto commitment. This process, which frequently receives coverage in The Guardian, allows residents to directly decide how to spend public budget and reflects the belief that by working with communities, councils can achieve better services and outcomes for residents and the borough as a whole. We empower communities to allocate funds to develop the resources and resilience based on their aspirations and visions. So the 4-year programme has helped to unlock new ways and issues, enabling residents to deliver deeply impactful projects across the borough. Community Assembly funding has 209 resident groups or individuals, charities, social enterprises, faith organisations, voluntary and community organisations, representing the diversity of experience and ways that communities and the council can work together to realise the ambition of creating their renewal. It has clearly demonstrated that our communities have a wealth of knowledge, skills and assets, and that residents understand what they need to resolve issues in their neighbourhood. The Community Assembly programme, since launch, has been iterative and evolved in line with learning and feedback from participants and recommendations for evaluation. The first cycle of community assemblies prompted a proposal for monies available to be increased, which was a recommendation for the Independent and Civic Participation Commission, and therefore at that point funding was increased to £100,000 of neighbourhood still being available for each of our 8 community neighbourhoods to allocate to projects that meet local priorities. An important area of improvement since the programme began was to widen participation and led to the introduction of the new Co-Create digital platform. This enables residents to go online to vote on which project should receive funding. In July 2022, over 2,835 residents used the platform, allocating funds to over 70 projects in partnership with local residents, voluntary and community organisations and the council. The digital platform has been highly effective in reaching more people, but there is recognition that it has to go hand in hand with in-person events and engagement to reach the broadest range of residents and community groups, including those who are not digital natives. Newham is on a journey to become a beacon of participatory democracy. The Community Assembly programme a fundamental proof of our commitment. Full evaluation report, which can be found from big page 85 of your agenda pack, sets out where we are on this journey, what has been done so far, and recommendations on how we will continue to evolve and improve the programme. It is based on feedback from residents, Community Assembly project leads, councillors, council services, and from external experts, including other local authorities and leaders in the field of participatory practice. A key outcome of the evaluation, as set out in recommendation 2.3 of the report, extends the Community Assembly cycle to a 2-year cycle to enable smoother processes, better collaboration among services, and more support for project delivery. The first year will focus on deliberation, project applications and participatory budgeting, and the second year will focus on project delivery and evaluation. Participants from previous cycles expressed that the last cycle felt rushed, whereas in earlier cycles it felt drawn out. So hopefully with this approach we will find a happy medium. Further proposals for the new cycle can be found at section 4. But some highlights include increasing the representativeness of residents involved with the assembly, increasing participation levels through implementation of a dedicated and accessibility and diversity of participation during the voting process through a simpler online voting process and increased opportunities for voting. Another key outcome of is an action to form an overall assembly working group that will define and deliver on an action plan of progressive improvements and work to ensure that over time, the community assembly programme will deliver even greater impact and return on the residents and the borough as a whole. Expressions of interest for this will be going out to a majority group later this year, and I look forward to working with you right now. I'll leave it there. I'm not sure if officers have got anything to add from my long introduction, but over officer colleagues, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm gonna be inviting Natalie, if you wanted to add any more comments, and if there are any other officer colleagues that want to contribute on this particular paper. Mohammed. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Councillor. I mean, just to say, obviously, it's a very comprehensive introduction. The key point for me to say is that this really is quite an extraordinary programme, and it's really recognised beyond Newham and is starting to gain real recognition across the UK. The recommendations are based on the insight we received from residents, from the evaluation of the programme to date. And I'm really grateful to support of colleagues and officers for their thoroughness in preparing this report. I think the key thing to say is that the programme is iterating, and I think feedback is really helpful. But that in part reflects some of the recommendations which are about enabling a slightly longer time frame so that projects have longer almost to go through that development process and then find robust ways of being delivered. I think also importantly, we've talked in here about how we improve almost the resident engagement aspects of the programme. And I think we're very aware that there remains an ongoing challenge around how we engage and bring this initiative into the programme going forward. So I'd want the steps being taken to do that. But again, thank you for the instruction.
Great. Okay. So, are there any questions? There was Councillor. Well, oh, sorry. Does Mohammed want to say something? Mohammed, would you like to say anything?
No, no. Happy to take questions if needed.
Okay. Thank you very much. Neil Wilson, and then I'll come to other colleagues.
Yeah, mine concerned about the diversity in terms of the second bullet point on page 82, big page 82, community involvement in brackets diversity, increase the diversity of people using Newham Co-Create, because whenever we set up a remote platform that doesn't then have ethnicity and disability not currently part of the data collected, I wonder how we might improve that. I realise that's a sort of technical thing in many respects when you have a platform where you're trying to collect data. So I'm cross-referencing that aim to increase diversity of people using Zoom Co-Create, and we're on an upward curve clearly from the numbers in the report from a relatively low base, but I'm just concerned. Used to talk about hard to reach groups, and we've changed that language. But I'm on that agenda where the groups that I've witnessed doesn't mean it does say that there is, although the base of respondents is much smaller, there's an overrepresentation of residents from a white background compared to Newham's population. So if I talk about Black African populations that are increasing within this borough, particularly in the south, represented in Plaistow and Canning Town wards, I just wonder about how we might capture that, for instance, if we don't know voting online, if it's not captured Co-Create. And if I may ask another one, or shall I do separate? They're interrelated, so I just do both, Chair, is that all right? Yeah. And the second one was on the theory of change evaluation framework. I did flag up in another place. I might be a bit geeky on this one, but the theory of change evaluation framework, October 22, which is on big page 160, does say that one of our measures will be the number, diverse and experience of residents who are involved in working groups. My concern is, like any project in terms of community involvement, though it's got national recognition, that we have a criticism that we're rounding up the usual suspects, to quote a line from Casablanca. And it's about how do we make certain that we do have, whether it's a tenant forum in terms of housing or co-production in terms of the area of adult social care, that we're actually making certain that dynamism, which we're proud of, and our diversity are reflected either online in statistical analysis to go to things like audit committee and others, but also to reassure residents that we are not necessarily having the same groups and the same people in the room, particularly over a 2-year period. So it's a long question, Chair. But...
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure there was a question in there somewhere. But on the point about diversity, so with the 2-year cycle, that the first year is a lot about the marketing of the programme and making sure that those hard to reach communities are made aware of what's happening, what's available to them, and how they can get involved. So with the use of different channels, that will be able to happen. I don't know, Natalie, if you've got anything else to add on that one.
I think to your point, it serves one audience, but we also know that it leaves real gaps. So part of the challenge and part of the sort of objective of the marketing and engagement stuff is how we also use our offline channels. So think about how we can make sure that other consultation events, make sure they refer to the community assembly programme. But we're also thinking about how we can use libraries, and also thinking about whether there could be other communications channels, for example, thinking about magazines, like leaflets that go out to households, so that we're almost covering off all the different ways in which we can reach out to residents across the borough. But I think also that's where, for example, the formation of the working group would be really important to us going forward, because we need to keep that conversation front and centre about how to support that and bring more people in who may not have experienced community assemblies or may have been deterred before because it feels like the usual suspect.
Just picking up on that, just in terms of the evaluation and insights generated, how much of that pointed to people generally aren't interested? As in, is there a hypothesis that was tested that there will just be some sections of our community that just aren't afraid of democracy? Not everyone is.
So we ask people who are involved in the programme.
Yeah.
So apologies, we can't answer that because we only reached out to those who are taking part. But it would be useful to think about the resident survey. To think about whether we could include a question as to, are you aware that we as a council deliver these programmes? Are you interested in taking part?
Yeah.
I think
that I can see you.
One of the conversations that we've been having with the officer team is around talk about branding, marketing, community assembly, and how we can change some of the lexicon around it to make it more inclusive. So, for example, community assemblies might feel quite a passive piece. So I think there would be a really usefully focus group with some organisations and groups to think about language that could be more inclusive.
Okay. Super.
Can I come back? Sorry, because there was a long piece of work which was presented to this cabinet in terms of ageing well, which involved a whole raft of residents. And if we're serious to try and sort of replicate that model, which I think we could learn from, because there is in the report, if I've read it, and I have reread this, that there is a need for us all collectively to link both our resident engagement strategies with other parts of the council to link. So, for instance, I'm not trying to make a pun here, but infrastructure. So I was going to say a concrete example, sorry. But, if we are serious about making a healthier Newham, for instance, as well as an ageing well Newham, it might be that we link in with the projects around more active participation within the micro gym sort of stuff that we've had in parks. It's about how we link that together without being predetermined in the sense that we're telling communities what we think they should be doing, but at the same time linking with that to ensure that it's not filling gaps that should be provided elsewhere by other providers. I'm not saying that, but so that it's sustainable. And I think that was where I was coming from, Chair, that how do we capture that if we're just having the same repeated groups, which is a criticism I know that we've had at various positions in the past. It's about how do we make certain there's that dialogue.
Okay.
That's really useful. I'll take those comments on board and see how we can use those other groups to join it all up.
I was also just sorry to add, but I sit on the ageing well delivery board.
Yes.
We are having conversations about how it's.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I saw Sarah and then Carleen and then Zulfika.
Okay, so I really welcome the review of the community assemblies funding. And what really pleased me was to see that we are now going to relook at the priorities that were set by the community assemblies 4 years ago or whatever, because some of them were really tired, and I think it's really helpful to look at priorities that change within an area. I also welcome the additional time, because I think that one of my criticisms has been that we are often top heavy with applications from the private community aid sector, and actual fact, the residents who could, with support and working at maybe across, could actually engage.
Yeah.
And I think that they often do need support. We may need to be a little bit careful about who holds the money, and I'm assuming that sometimes a third party holds the money for a resident group. So, but having given extra time, we may then see that, I know on some, and especially East Man and Green Street, where actually we've only delivered not even half of the project. Now, either that's because they were too ambitious or there was a lack of understanding, but that should then, and I know that the money goes back into the pot. I know that we're not just wasting the money, but I just think that it would be more helpful. And on the voluntary sector, we still have, I think, organisations who they know they can only have money in one neighbourhood. They really need to make that choice and stop putting in different areas like it was a lottery, because actually that just confuses the working group because they don't know. You know, we meet at different times, and I would be very interested in joining your working group. Yes, but thank you, because I think that this has been really helpfully put together, and you haven't shied away from issues that we will talk about for quite a while. So no question there at all, just helpful comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You just welcoming them. Yeah, great. I've got Colleen and then Zuba.
Charlie, they got Zuben.
Papers. Sorry, forgive me. Colleen.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Carlini, Cabinet Member for Food Safety. I did have a couple of remarks I wanted to make, Councillor McQueen, and I guess Councillor McQueen's picked up on some of my points. But I do just want to bring us back to the paper in regards to the amount of people that participated in 2018 to 20, being 3,157, going up to just over 16,000 in subsequent years. And actually that says something. One of the things I want to just pick up on, Charlene, and it's to do with actually how much of the difference of this is made to residents. The fact that we've had 16,000 people engaged in a process of community assemblies for the betterment of their communities says something around how we are dealing with social isolation, how we're dealing with building communities, how we're dealing with providing something more than just a service that is a normal service. And actually, I would say within my own area, Plaistow area, there have been groups that have been formed out of the back of the community assembly projects that have made and are real substances within the environment, so that they're now self-organising, doing much work in the community, helping to address the issues, helping us as councillors, making sure that they keep us accountable for what it is that they're asking for, and so on and so forth. So I think the impacts of the community assemblies are far more than, I guess, even this document said. And actually, we should be really, really grateful for that. And so I thank you and your service for what it is that you've done. I do welcome the remarks in regards to 2-year cycles. It's really difficult in a small amount of time to deliver something of quality with very little time to do it. That is easier when it's a small project, but even if we thought about season, you know, it takes time to sow, it then takes time to reap. And so just the opportunity to give residents the time to really establish their projects is an amazing opportunity. But I just wanted to pick up on one question, which was, in this process, all that we've learned, all that we have taken in consideration to make the process better, how are we engaging young people? That's not
So you've mentioned in the report, but I know Mohammed hasn't had an opportunity to say anything, but he might wish to say something about
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question was, how is it we're engaging young people in this process with the amazing work that's happening?
Yeah, I think that's a recommendation that's in the paper, and it's been recognised that we need to be better aligned with some of the other forums that happen for young people, particularly with the youth empowerment team. So that's definitely an aspect of work that we need to combine with this process. So I think that there was a notion that we will try and have a subgroup for young people initially that can be involved in this process. I think young people came back and said that they want to have autonomy over their own decision-making powers as well. So I think that's as a piece of work that we probably need to align a lot closer with our colleagues in youth empowerment.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Just to add to that, you know, that they do have the youth assemblies, but I know that particular neighbourhoods have sort of, you know, said, well, you know, it would be nice for the young people to be included in us as well. I know in Benton, the youth, so they put a project in, which was successful, and it was so heartening for them to come along and to do their pitch and to be involved, and it's that intergenerational work. So yeah, we can try and get a bit more of that going. It would be great across the other neighbourhoods.
And I guess, if you don't mind, Chair, just in regard to what you said, that opportunity for entrepreneurship, which we can actually start at that space and grow, is really important. What I do know from, and me and Councillor Jane Lofthouse have had the great pleasure of being part of the working groups and our local community assemblies teams. And it's been amazing to see some of the things that have happened. And it's been amazing to see the relationships. I just wonder, how do we ensure that the young person's voice, even though they want, if you speak to young people, they will say, I want my own space. I don't want to be subjected to X. But they say, we want our own space. This is what we want to do. And I'm assuming that this, through the recommendation, is going to give that assurance that that's going to happen. But for those young people that do want to be part of the wider community assemblies, I'm assuming from what you've said, that is possible. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go to Sulfrica.
Thank you, Chair. And I think Colleen has summed it up very well in terms of success of this brilliant initiative. It clearly shows the participatory democracy that we introduced a few years back. And if you look at the number of projects and the diverse range of the projects across the borough, across the neighborhood, there was a bit of buzz actually. You know, when you attend these assemblies or the working group, etc., people came up with lots of ideas, and there was kind of empowered them, giving them ownership of the local environment, particularly. A lot of initiatives came through. And can you imagine the ripple effect of those activities on streets? When people show those, the visibility has a very positive impact. People see, and then that make them think sometimes, actually, should I dump that piece of litter or whatever as well? So it will probably see some long-term impact in that sense. So we have kind of sort of tried to put sort of civic pride in the local environment. So great initiatives. And the comment I have, a question I suppose for officer is, because bearing in mind we've got 8 neighborhoods and sometimes you get projects of similar nature. I just wonder how we're going to, and I think I've discussed that before previously as well, how are we going to capture those to make sure that we attain some collective benefit across the borough rather than having duplication in 7 different neighborhoods, 8 different neighborhoods. So it's just a more practical operational issue to have some due diligence, perhaps for Mohammed.
I mean, what I would say, sorry to interject, there should be nothing that deviates from the corporate strategic intent of this organisation and needs to demonstrate that aligns to the strategic objectives as set out on the corporate plan. I think the point that Sarah made is a really valid one, in so much as what needs to happen during the next cycle is that there is that diversity of project submission being encouraged. That's where you get the assurance from, and then that being, you know, the oversight that the cabinet lead provides, and then the interaction with the different service areas to just provide that additional overlay of checking to make sure that there's no duplication. It's really important for everyone to note that the community assemblies are not meant to be a replacement of our core substantive infrastructure work and development of Newham as a place. They're additions to help enhance neighbourhoods, but not just because a group of residents have a pet project, but actually there's a really, really clear framework. Otherwise, that would really be a waste of money. And they're not our replacement for grants. I mean, I know we don't have a grant scheme because loads of councils don't have grant schemes. But one of the things I'm concerned about is there's a view that, you know, it's just community assemblies, you know, is the only way you can get money. And we need to separate, because that's about the neighbourhood assemblies, I mean, you know, is about the participatory democracy. It's different from any other pitch that an organisation may wish to make or scope out around collaboration under the guise of under different models. Does that help? Yeah.
Sadly, they see that as the only form of funding from Newham. And I think we need to change the narrative on it, because we have no, I think it's like community organisations, you have no paid staff, good access to it. It often gets when you have the larger organisations who are in the main well funded,
Yes,
who then see the community neighbourhood assembly as an opportunity for them. And very often they are far more experienced at putting together an application. And so therefore the working group, that looks as if that's like really top notch. But actually we need to find a way of encouraging those smaller grassroots organisations who don't have those opportunities to working with them to help them grow a bit. Sorry to interject.
It's okay. I've got Councillor James Aston, and I'm going to suggest that we conclude and go to voting with some just final remarks, comments. Yeah.
Mine was just a quick one on the back of Councillor Ali's point, which I think it's quite important. And I think what this has thrown up, and we've seen it in some areas, is bringing forward people within the borough who have skills that actually we can use our area. We had our first round in my ward projects, Parkways, so we've actually worked on a number of other projects since, because they clearly have it. They had using their skills, they could see a project in their area, but actually we can use them on other things. And I think actually making sure we capture those skills, those people interests, and where we can use them in other areas, but also where those projects come up. And I think we could now adopt it on a corporate level and roll it out because it works, is an important thing just to enhance it. And actually then it sends a message to other groups that this isn't just a kind of quality, it can be rolled out. Now many of the projects will be very small and very local, it's something with their area, but if you just want something wider, I think it's important we kind of capture those skills and that talent. And just one thing I'll go out as well is the interesting thing is I think the test of whether these schemes work and they take time to bed in and we now so on to the third round is who's taking them up. And you've seen people take them up who aren't necessarily natural fans of the council or support or wider agenda. I think that's quite an interesting test, because if people who wouldn't naturally support the manifesto or where we're going with it are interested in taking part and applying and being successful, it shows that people do see the value of it and are engaging with it. That's quite important for public body. I think we can reach across the board. So I think that interesting test and the one that's being passed shows it's heading in and working. I think that's
Okay. Right. I'm going to suggest that we move to a determination. I mean, this is a pretty hefty amount, 1.6 billion, and ongoing diligence around how that money is spent. And one thing, just for assurance purposes, of all these projects that, you know, are successfully progressing, just in terms of maintenance over what time frame and ensuring that whatever allocation of money covers longer term sort of cost implications, so that no eventual pressure on the revenue, is that will that be captured in the operations going forward?
It is, yeah. Do you want to add anything, Natalie?
No, no, just to say it's a very live issue that was picked up during the evaluations.
Okay. All right, brilliant. Okay, so on the basis of this discussion, on what you've read, what you've heard, noting the recommendations as set out on big page number 75, do we all agree to the recommendations?
Subject to the amendment.
Oh, and subject to the amendment, which was articulated by
2.1.2.
yeah,
Strike out the word through.
an insert of neighbourhood. Yeah, do we agree? Agreed. Thank you very much. Right, so that brings us to the end of. Well done, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you at the next cabinet meeting. And just to advise in advance, the next cabinet meeting in February is likely to take place in the daytime with start time to be confirmed, and notices will be going out at the appropriate juncture.
Could you just formally resolve the exclusion of press and public and receive the two?
Oh, right, okay. So I'm gonna formally note.
So we just resolve the exclusion of press and public.
Okay.
That's what item 10.
To resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business to the extent that exempt information as described in part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972 is likely to be disclosed. Do we agree?
Agreed.
And then similarly, to note that agenda item 11, there's an exempt appendices for agenda item 5, which we've already made the determination that will remain exempt. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, and that on agenda item 12, there's exempt appendix for agenda items which we've previously discussed and determined around, but obviously the exempt appendix remains exempt. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, take care. Go, switch to the news.
Okay.